I forgot my niece the doorbell was fixed. At 1:13 a.m., the porch camera woke up. Wind in the Palo Verde. 2 silhouettes. Paige, my sister's girl. Colton, her cologne. And a plan. Whispers. She keeps the originals in a red folder. Scan tonight. Notary Friday. If she resists, emergency guardianship. Pike says it's cleaner. Pause. Replay. Freeze on Paige's cheek. That word, guardianship, burned hotter than the porch light. People think retirement is quiet. It isn't. I carried mail for 38 years. Paper is never just paper. It's a promise or a weapon. So I did what carriers do. I logged the route. Names, times, evidence. Doorbell video saved. A list on a stiff notebook. Bank, doctor, neighbor. Proof. Morning. Lemon cleaner and small talk. Paige's smiles stopped at her teeth. On the table, just standard papers. Power of attorney, advance directive, trust restatement. 3 signatures, 1 erasure, mine. Not today. I pressed record on the app. I called my bank officer, Maya. I need you to flag everything. If anyone brings a paper with my name, call me while they're standing there. She'd already seen 2 $0 pings on my checking, testing the lock. Then my doctor, Dr. Singh. I said, full cognitive today. She did the tests. I drew the clock. I counted back. Her verdict, you're capable. In writing. Now the clock is ticking to Friday. They have a notary. I have a camera, a letter, and a spine that remembers its job. If they want my name, they'll have to hear it from me. Title card. Then we begin. I started with the bank. I like my credit union because it lives 5 minutes away and smells like sugar cookies on Fridays. The branch officer who helped me set up automatic payments the year I fell and sprained my wrist is named Maya. She knows the kind of person who reads every line and the kind that doesn't. She treats both like they deserve patience. I called and asked if she had time to talk. It turned out she had time right then. "Miss Delgado, you never call unless something's off," she said, cheerful but braced. "What's going on?" "I'd like to flag my accounts for any attempts to add a power of attorney. If anyone calls pretending to be me, I want the recordings. If anyone shows up with paperwork about my house or my investments, I want you to call me while they're standing in front of you." She was quiet for a second. "We can make a note and put additional verification in place," she said. "And I need you to know something. We saw 2 $0 ACH pings on your checking this week. It can be harmless. Some vendors test microdeposits, but we see it in fraud cases too. It's like someone knocking to see if you're home." I said, "Freeze anything you can freeze without starving me. And can you tell me if anyone called lately to verify my information?" She clicked keys and hummed. She said, 2 calls yesterday afternoon. A woman, older voice, said she was you. Got the year of your birth right. Wrong zip code. We asked her to come in with ID. She hung up. "Maya," I said, "you're the kind of person who always brings a sweater." "What does that mean?" She laughed.
"It means thank you," I said, "and if a Mr. Pike calls you, he's a friend I don't want to have." After the bank, I called my doctor. Dr. Singh is the one who told me my bones look like a grove of pecan trees in need of attention and taught me how to love spinach. When my husband died, she was the one who squeezed my shoulder and asked about my sleep before my cholesterol. I told her I wanted a cognitive evaluation, not because I feared I was slipping, but because a certain word had been planted in my house and watered with looks. "Ruth," she said, "we'll do a full workup today if you can come by at 3. Don't spend the rest of the morning convincing yourself you have to prove anything to anyone but yourself." That is exactly the kind of sentence a doctor says that makes you cry in the parking lot. I didn't cry. I wiped the kitchen counter again. I lined up the lemons with their dimples pointing the same direction because order is a way to pray. At 11, Paige slid a stack of papers across my dining table like we were about to exchange countries. "Since you've been thinking about it, let's get ahead of things," she said. "It's what responsible families do. Simple will, some powers of attorney so we can help if, anything happens. It's all standard." The top page said durable power of attorney in a font that looked like it wanted me to trust it. The second said advanced directive. The third looked like a trust restatement, which is one of those things people mention over coffee to sound like they own their future outright. I had never seen these exact pages before, but I knew their cousins. I have delivered cousins of these pages to porches where people cried behind the screen door. "Who's Mr. Pike?" I asked. "His name is on the footer." She blinked. "He's a friend of Colton's dad," she said. "He does elder law. He's nice. He said with the way the world is going, it's better to set a trust and have a springing power so we can, step in if needed. Otherwise, courts are slow." "Springing," I repeated, "meaning it wakes up and bites when someone says the magic word?" "Auntie," she said, voice sliding into sugar, "I know I'd never bite you. I'm only trying to help. Sign here, here, and here." I held the pen like it was made of glass and didn't sign anything. "Let me read," I said. "I'm not quick like I was. Give me time." She frowned, barely. "We don't have much," she said. "There are tax changes and deadlines, and Mr. Pike has court next week, and the notary's in town Friday night only. This is perfect timing." I set the pen down. Perfect timing usually shows up unannounced, like a monsoon. She laughed like she didn't get it and changed the subject to a sale on chicken thighs. I drove to the bank after lunch. The credit union lobby was cool and smelt like someone had just taken cookies out of the oven. Maya sat me in her office and shut the door like we were about to gossip. She pulled up my profile, pointed to the notes she'd added, and repeated what she told me on the phone, slow so I could feel the steadiness behind it. "If anyone comes in with documents claiming to act on your behalf, we require you, or absent you, a review that includes verification from your doctor and from our legal team." And I hate that I have to say this out loud, but you'd be surprised. We don't accept notarized copies of signatures as proof that a new document is valid. People like fragments. We like whole people. I asked, "Do banks always talk like this?" "Only when we like our customers," she said, and then leaned in. "A Mr. Pike left a voicemail. He asked if we honor properly executed POAs under the Arizona Uniform Power of Attorney Act. I called back and said, we honor documents we believe the account holder actually wants." "Good," I said. "If he calls again and asks what I want, tell him I want a dog that doesn't shed." Her eyes warmed and she said, "That's the other thing. We're also watching for large cash withdrawals or changes in online banking devices. If you add a phone, I'll call you. If a phone appears without you, we'll lock everything and I'll call you louder."
She walked me to the door like we'd been at a family picnic. That's how I felt with Maya, like we were two people who didn't share history but shared intention. At 3, I sat in an exam room while a nurse who called me dear handed me a clipboard with shapes to copy and words to remember. Dr. Singh went through the motions with the cheer of someone who likes proving a point to fear. She asked me to draw a clock, count backward by 7s, recall 3 words she'd said at the beginning of the visit. She asked me to tell her what I'd do if I found a stamped, addressed letter on the sidewalk. "I would bring it to the post office," I said, deadpan. She said, "You would probably sort it by route number on the way." When the tests ended, she folded her hands and looked at me like I was a person and not a bundle of symptoms. "Ruth, your cognitive evaluation is normal," she said. "Not just normal, strong. I'm writing a letter that states you are fully capable of making your own medical and financial decisions. If anyone calls me suggesting otherwise, I will ask them if they're ready to put their name on a line for a false claim." "Paige called you, didn't she?" I asked. "She stopped by. I listened, then I scheduled you. That's the order I prefer. Do you feel safe at home?" I heard the shape of the question she was not allowed to ask any other way. I told her I did. I told her I was gathering evidence because that's the way I'd learned to carry fear, by putting it in an envelope with a return address. When I got home, Paige had made chicken and rice and a dessert that tasted like almond extract and insistence. She asked about my appointment in the voice she uses when she wants to fill the silence with her assumptions. I told her the doctor said I was doing well. Great. Then we can finish the papers tomorrow. Todd is free to notarize after work. He charges extra for nighttime, but it's worth it to get this done before the weekend. We'll all feel better. I smiled like an aunt who had been given a card made of construction paper and glue. Tomorrow is fine, I said. I love when people are available. That night, I watched the doorbell timeline the way some people watch tides. 2 bars pinged at midnight, voices in the living room, the whine and slide of a scanner, pages turning, the red folder, my letter to my husband from July 1987, the one I had to read 3 times that summer because the part where he wrote, "We'll make this work, Ruth," kept changing tense inside my head. I watched Paige lay that page in the scanner and lift the lid like a lid over a promise. "Scan the signature," she said. "Pike can draft a springing POA using it." "She won't know," Colton said. "She'll thank me when this is over." I paused the recording, copied it to a thumb drive, and emailed it to an address I created the day my husband went into hospice. A second self for when the first self can't hold everything. Subject line, Route 42, rain delay. That was a joke only I would understand. In 26 years on Route 42, I never delayed for rain. But I watched storms and learned their language and left packages under awnings because people don't deserve soggy books. In the morning, a white sedan with a government seal on the side pulled up in front of my house. The woman who stepped out had a clipboard and a kind expression. She said, "I'm with Adult Protective Services. We received a report from a family member that you might be having some confusion." I poured her water, offered her a chair, and handed her a copy of Dr. Singh's letter the way you hand a sheriff a license at a routine stop. She read it, asked me a few questions. No one passes and fails, but everyone answers from their gut. What's your day like? Who helps you? What happens if you fall? And then she stood and said, "If you need anything, call us. And if anyone is pressuring you to sign something, you can call us for that too." After she left, Paige stood by the front window studying the street like the street had betrayed her. "Who was that?" she asked. "A woman doing her job," I said, opening a window to let the smell of lemon cleaner find a new home. "What did she want?" "To make sure I know how to dial a phone." "I do." Paige's face tightened. "Colton said we should have done this sooner," she murmured, not to me. In the afternoon, I was pulling weeds by the rosemary bush when my neighbor Harlan stopped at the edge of my yard and tipped his cap. He's retired law enforcement and mows his lawn in lines that make geometric proofs of who he is. He watches trash day like a sport. We wave to each other every Tuesday. "You good, Miss Ruth?" he asks. "Saw a county car out front." "I'm holding," I said. He looked at the doorbell camera, then back at me. "There's a man I know who installs wildlife cameras on ranches. He's quiet. If you needed a second set of eyes not attached to your porch, I could text you his number." "I might need that," I said, and he texted me before I got to the thank you. By dusk, my living room had a new witness. You wouldn't know it. The technician tucked a pinhole camera into the throat of a ceramic vase and slid a pin-sized microphone under a jar of marbles on the bookshelf. He showed me where the receiver would be in my bedroom and how to copy files with the twist of my fingers. He asked if I wanted audio in the guest room. I said no. I wasn't hunting for everything. I was catching what I already knew was moving. Friday moved like smoke. Paige cleaned the counters like she was polishing a story she wanted to sell. Colton checked his phone and once the front door lock. They moved documents in and out of a folder that wasn't the red one and stretched their voices to make their words sound softer. "This will be so much easier," Paige said at lunch, like ease was love. When the knock came, it was light, almost embarrassed. A man walked in with a leather folio and a portable stamp that wanted to be a gavel. "Evening," he said. "I'm Todd." "Last name?" I asked. He smiled. "Just Todd today," he said. Of course,
I said, and the refrigerator hummed in the silence that followed. Paige sat me at the table and put little flags on lines where a person like me was supposed to sign. "It's all standard," she said again. "Power of attorney, springing, so we can step in if the doctor says. Living will, so your wishes are known. A trust restatement, so your house is protected." "Protected from what?" I asked. "The world," she said, as if she had met it and I hadn't. I read aloud, because reading out loud slows words down until they have the decency to show you their shoes. "Agent may sell, convey, and otherwise dispose of principal's real property as deemed in principal's best interest," I read. "That's a big shoe." "It's for emergencies, like if you needed care or if, God forbid, something happened and you couldn't decide, we would in your best interest." "Which doctor triggers this spring?" I asked, not looking up. "It says a licensed physician." "Dr. Singh is a physician." "Dr. Singh wrote yesterday that my mind is fine. If the spring requires one doctor to say otherwise, which doctor is in the box with the spring?" Her smile thinned. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "Sign here, here, and here." Before I picked up the pen, I called Maya and laid the phone in the middle of the table. "If I sign any document that gives another person control over my bank accounts, will the credit union honor it without talking to me directly?" Maya didn't hesitate. "No," she said. "We honor documents you want us to honor, not documents someone else brings to us. If you ever decide you want us to recognize a power of attorney, I will walk you through it step by step, and we will notarize in branch with our own notary, and I will bring you a cookie. Until then, anyone presenting a paper to act as you can wait in the lobby until the sun burns out." Todd adjusted his stamp like a hat that suddenly didn't fit. Paige tried a laugh that used to work on me when she was 12 and I was letting her ride in the front seat. "We're just trying to help," she said. "Why are you making this so hard?" "Because it is," I said. They stepped into the hallway to whisper, and the microphone under the marbles had better hearing than I do. "If she balks, we file emergency Monday," Paige hissed. "Use the checklist: confusion, wondering, missed meds, safety risk, financial exploitation." "Financial exploitation?" Colton asked. "We're preventing it," she said, "from scammers. That's the story." They came back with faces like masks you buy the day after Halloween at a discount because they don't look like anyone. "Sign now," Paige said, "so Todd doesn't have to charge more for coming back." "I hate wasting anyone's time," I said, and put the pen down, pushing it away with 2 fingers like it was alive. Colton straightened up to look taller. "We've been patient," he said. "We can be patient in court, too. Judges are tired of people waiting too long. We'll show them you need help." "Help," I repeated, my favorite word. "Who helps you, Colton?" He didn't answer. Paige stepped in like a cheerleader saves a quarterback. "Auntie, please sign. This isn't a betrayal. It's a plan." "It feels like one," I said, and then I did the thing that scared me more than signing. I walked away. "Give me 5 minutes." In my bedroom, I closed the door and said to the quiet, "Route completed." It sounded ridiculous the way all good plans do when you make them alone. Harlan texted back a thumbs up and then the words, "Ready." Dr. Singh texted, "If needed, I can pick up." Maya texted, "I'm on speaker if anything changes." I put my hand on the dresser the way you do when a ship rocks, and when the ship of my house stopped, I went back. The documents waited on the table like a scorpion waiting to be sure you know it's already in the room. I sat. Paige smiled. The pen looked at me. "If everything is so innocent, you won't mind showing these pages to a lawyer I choose before I sign." "We don't have time," she said. "Then we don't have a document," I said. Colton shook his head. "We'll do this another way," he said. "Say it out the way, so we all know what story we're in." Paige lifted her chin the way people do when they want to act like honesty is grace. We'll file for emergency guardianship Monday morning. We have a template. Dr. Pike's affidavit will document the confusion. Once that's in place, your signature won't be necessary. We'll make sure you're safe. We'll put the house in trust, sell at market, move you to a place that can handle your needs, and manage the proceeds so they last. Which one-bedroom did you pick out for me? I asked. Her mouth curled. Don't be cruel, she said. I'm asking for the address in case the postcard gets lost in the mail. Colton added, like he was reading from a brochure he didn't write. You'll have activities and meals and friends your age. I have a lemon bowl and a credit union and a woman named Singh who likes my memory, I said. I have a neighbor who mows straight lines. I have a doorbell that remembers what you forget to keep secret. I don't recall asking to trade. We were at a place beyond persuasion. You can feel it like a temperature change. Todd cleared his throat, mumbled that he had another appointment, and made himself smaller as he slipped out the door. The knock that came 10 minutes later was 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats again. That is the kind of knock you only hear if you've identified it in advance. Harlan. Behind him were 2 Phoenix police officers and a woman who introduced herself as Detective Elena Chavez with financial crimes and elder abuse. You should never be grateful to see a badge in your living room. You should also never be ashamed to be grateful when the badge sits down and looks you in the eye. Miss Delgado, the detective said, do you have any recordings in your home made with your consent and for the purpose of documenting suspected fraud? I slid the pin microphone toward her and lifted the vase to reveal the little eye that had been watching us. Harlan handled the SD card like it was evidence, because it was. My phone with the porch video lay on the table like a companion. The detective put on gloves and made a copy on a device she pulled from her bag. She asked where I got the doorbell. I told her. She asked when the last technician was here. I told her, and I tasted the way truth fills a mouth when you don't have to hide it. Paige stammered. This is illegal, she said. We live here. You can't spy on us. In Arizona, this is a one-party consent state. Miss Delgado recorded inside her own home with her consent. Her porch camera recorded a public-facing area. You spoke in her living room and on her porch. You had no reasonable expectation of privacy while discussing your plan to obtain control of her property and person by misrepresenting her capacity and using a notary to execute documents she did not understand or want. Do you understand what I just said? Paige opened her mouth and shut it again. Colton tried to look like a man in a movie who decides not to run. The detective asked them to sit. They sat. The word guardianship is a good word when it fits. I have seen it save people. I have delivered the packet to a caregiver's hands and watched relief bloom so bright it looked like youth. In the wrong hands, it is a crowbar. Detective Chavez explained this in her careful voice while one of the officers stood near the door and the other near the hallway. She explained that Dr. Singh had already faxed a statement noting my evaluation and her concern about the arrival of a concerned relative with a narrative that did not fit clinical evidence. She explained that Maya had sent a suspicious activity report to her because 2 verification calls and a follow-up from a lawyer's office created a pattern. She explained what charges might look like if the county attorney agreed. You're doing this to family, Paige said. And it wasn't a sentence, it was a groan pulled thin. No, I said. You did this to family. I am doing this to paper. They read rights. They made copies of the documents and took the originals with my consent. They asked if I wanted a protective order. I said yes. The words forced to type later were not satisfying, but they were necessary. Attempted fraud, conspiracy, attempted document forgery, elder financial exploitation. I did not add anything about betrayal because that isn't a crime you can bring to court, even though sometimes it should be. When they were gone, the house sank 5 inches lower on its foundation. That is not an accurate measurement, but it's the one that fits. Harlan took off his cap and looked at me like he was waiting for instruction. I made him tea. He sat on my couch and admired my father's flag without mentioning it.
Men who mow straight lines are often good at letting a room be quiet. I thanked him in the small words you use when big ones are too heavy. 2 days later, Detective Chavez called to tell me charges were filed. People think this part is fast. It is not. It is a room sealed with rules. She explained what the next months would look like. There would be an arraignment. There would be a hearing. There might be a deal. There would be things I'd be asked to read aloud and things I'd be asked not to talk about on the phone. She told me to forward her any contact from Mr. Pike. I asked her if she'd spoken to him. She laughed softly. He hung up on me twice, she said, and then his body remembered it has a bar number and he didn't hang up the third time. Dr. Singh called to check on my sleep. Maya called to ask if I wanted to add extra security to my online banking. I said yes and went down to the branch so she could watch me make new passwords with my own hands. There's a notary in-house if you ever want to create documents you actually want, she said, the kind that appoints someone you choose in case you ever do decide you want help someday. We can list 2 agents and require both signatures. Control can be a glove that fits your hand. One day, I said, not today. In the meantime, life would not stop requiring groceries. The Monday after the arrest, I went to the market and took my time with the tomatoes. A woman asked me if I knew how to choose avocados. I told her the trick my husband taught me about the stem cap and the color beneath it. I texted Harlan a picture of my front steps at dusk. He texted back, "Look secure," and a picture of his mower. Dr. Singh sent me a link to a community center that offered Tai Chi for seniors, which made me laugh until I watched a woman my age balancing like a crane, and I penciled it into my calendar. The hearing landed on a Thursday afternoon, heavy with heat. Courtrooms are designed to make everyone sit up straight. I wore the blue dress my husband used to call my postmaster blue, even though I never managed more than my route. Page and Colton walked in, led by a public defender whose eyes were tired. They did not look at me. Mr. Pike entered with his own tie, nodded like it wanted to strangle the conversation. He sat in the back like lawyers do when they don't want to be in front of the splash. The judge asked questions in a voice that did not want speeches. Detective Chavez answered like she was paying back a debt. Dr. Singh answered like she was clearing a throat. Maya answered like she was reading a recipe she'd made enough times to know by heart. I answered like a mail carrier, stating a change of address. It wasn't dramatic. That was the relief. The prosecutor was a woman who wore her hair in a bun so tight it looked like a decision. She offered a deal: no contact with me, no claims on my property, counseling and community service, with a plea agreement that if they violated any part, the recommended jail time would rise like bread. If they accepted, the recommendation was 18 months with credit for time served and mandatory classes on financial abuse. If they did not, the charges could stack in a way that would make the next holidays a row of shouts across glass. Before they decided, they looked at me. It is a strange thing to watch someone you have loved try to calculate how much of your forgiveness they get to include in their math. I did not nod or shake my head. I folded my hands the way my mother taught me to fold them in church, even after she stopped believing exactly how she was taught to believe. They accepted the deal. Mr. Pike whispered furiously to the public defender for a moment and then collected his briefcase with a little flourish and stood to leave, only to be asked by the judge to remain for a separate matter regarding the unauthorized practice concerns flagged by the detective. The tiny satisfaction that bloomed in my chest was not pretty. It was also not mean. It was survival. I went home and watered the rosemary and bought a small fern in the bathroom because I wanted something new to take root where other things had been uprooted. I opened a file with Dr. Singh's letter and Maya's notes and copies of the documents I had not signed. I put them in a new folder, not read, and labeled it with a name only I would recognize. Not today. Paige wrote to me once from the county jail. The letter was neat and careful. She used phrases like, "You know I love you," and I didn't understand how serious this was. And we were just trying to get ahead of the inevitable. She wrote about her mother, my sister, who had left town when Paige was young and how she had learned that the way to avoid being abandoned is to take control. She wrote that control had never felt ugly to her until a woman in orange 3 bunks over told her about a grandmother she should have visited. She did not apologize. She asked me to think about the house differently, like it had walls that could keep her safe too. I did not write back. I do not know if that will be the last time I didn't write back. Forgiveness is not a document. It is also not a doorbell. It cannot be triggered by motion alone. It needs time and weight and what Dr. Singh calls boundaries shaped like sunlight. Maybe one day I will write her. Maybe I will say, I loved you when you were 3 and stuck your tongue out at the camera in every picture. I loved you when you were 8 and practiced the piano with the sustain pedal glued to every note. I loved you when you were 19 and brought home a cat and left it here because your roommate was allergic. I loved you when you stood on my porch at 1:13 a.m. and whispered something that scalded my ears. I love you now in a way that does not include my checkbook. What I did write was a list, taped inside a kitchen cabinet where I keep the sugar. It was not for me, not entirely. It was for anyone who might someday open that cabinet for me because I could not. It said, if I cannot speak for myself, call Dr. Singh, call Maya, call Harlan if you can't reach me. Call my priest only if you can stand him telling you one story too long. Do not call anyone named Pike. Do not let anyone not on this list touch a pen with my name on it. I also wrote a real will. It was easier than I had made it in my mind. The lawyer I chose, a woman my age with hair that went its own way, sat with me and read every clause until it felt like water that had lost its chill. I left money to a library because libraries teach the same stubborn hope my father taught me when he told me the post office had 3 enemies: rain, snow, and excuses, and the first 2 were more honest. I left something to the community center where I had, to my own shock, started a Tai Chi class. I left something to the neighbor who blows leaves into a pile that always manages to look like an animal sleeping. I made a trust for a scholarship for a kid on Route 42 who still writes thank you notes with pen on paper. I listed a friend in Tucson as my agent for medical decisions if the spring had to ever spring. I made a list of songs to play at my funeral that would annoy my husband if he could hear them, which made me happy. Do not mistake all of this for a moral victory lap. It is just the list you make when you have learned that the state between quiet and silence is where you must do your work. There were moments I wanted to burn the red folder where it sat on the top shelf of my bedroom closet. I did not. I moved it behind winter sweaters and tucked a copy of Dr. Singh's letter into it like a stubborn bookmark. There were mornings I woke up convinced I had made the whole thing up, that there was no 1:13 a.m., that the ring light had been an optical trick, that I had turned into an old woman with stories where evidence should be. On those mornings, I would make coffee and play the video for myself and listen to the wind and my porch and my niece, and then I would go outside and feel the sun and tell the rosemary bush, we're fine. And the bush would say nothing back in a very reassuring way. In the middle of all this, the mail still came. It was a relief to have to walk to the curb and open the box and sort junk from news. One afternoon, I found a glossy mailer that said, "Seniors, unlock your home equity with a reverse mortgage," and I laughed so loud Harlan looked over. I walked over and handed it to him. "Do I look like a woman who wants to unlock her house?"
He said you look like a woman who just changed the locks. And I nodded because metaphors should be balanced like a checkbook. Once at the grocery store, a woman I know from church asked where Paige was. I told her truthfully that she wasn't living with me anymore. The woman said, "That's a shame. Young people need elders," and then asked me to bring my deviled eggs to the parish picnic. I went home and made a batch and ate too warm and had to lie down. Needing and taking are cousins that don't always get along. If you let one into your house, the other tends to show up with a suitcase.
I heard from Detective Chavez every few weeks as the case moved. She told me they completed interviews. She told me the notary turned in his stamp. She told me Mr. Pike was cooperating with an investigation, which sounded like a sentence composed by lawyers about lawyers. She told me that when the sentencing came, I could make a statement if I wanted. I asked if I could send one on paper instead. She said I could. I wrote that paper the way I wrote letters to families when I was a carrier and a package had been lost in the storm and found, miraculously, 2 days later, dry inside a neighbor's garage. Short, precise, sincere, stubborn. On the day Paige was sentenced, I stayed home. It wasn't cowardice. It was respect for my own heart, for the judge's role, for the fact that not every story ends with eyes meeting across a room and a chapter closing clean. Detective Chavez called afterward and told me the judge had stuck to the agreement. 18 months. No contact order, restitution for the notary fees I didn't pay, mandatory classes, community service hours at a food bank that might, if she was brave, teach her generosity that doesn't demand ownership in return. That night, I walked my street like a mail route and counted porch lights. When I retired, I missed the way porches tell you stories. Who was expecting someone, who goes to bed early, who forgets to switch the bulb. The doorbell light on my house felt less like a warning than a steady heartbeat. I stood at the edge of my yard and looked at the profile of my house against the sky and said, because no one was there to hear it, and sometimes that helps, "My house, my name, my life." A month later, I was at the community center after Tai Chi, drinking coffee that tasted like old memory and listening to a woman tell me about her sister in Omaha. She was laughing, wiping tears away with the heel of her hand, and in the middle of the laughter, she put her hand on mine and said, "I heard about your niece. People talk. I'm sorry." She said it like a woman who has eaten similar news for breakfast. If you ever want an extra set of eyes when you sign something, I like reading more than I like TV. "Thank you," I said. "I like that sentence." I took the long way home along a cul-de-sac where every house looks like my house and none of them are. I thought about all the times I had handed someone a certified envelope and watched them brace. I thought about the times I had delivered a postcard with a beach on it and watched the relief. I thought about the first time I saw the inside of a courtroom when my husband and I had to testify about a mailbox vandal who thought baseball bats were a political statement. The judge looked bored until a woman said her medication had been in that box. Then the judge looked like a door. Doors are interesting things. You forget they're there when they do their job. You curse them when they stick. You praise them when they keep something ugly outside. Most doors don't care what you think of them. They swing, they stay closed, they do their best with the hardware they have. You have to choose who gets to carry a key. That's not paranoia. That's homeownership. There is a temptation to take a story like this and paint it with two colors, victims and villains, heroes and thieves. It is cleaner that way. But paint like that cracks under heat. My niece made choices that I cannot make clean for her, and I will not make dirty for myself. I can love who she was without excusing what she did. I can imagine the fear that fed her control without letting it feed me. I can bake the almond cookies she used to steal from the cooling rack, and then eat them all myself. I can sit on my porch and watch the street and wave to the child on a scooter.
I can remember my husband's laugh when a pigeon tried to steal his hot dog at the ballpark and say out loud, "You would have hated this part," and then feel him squeeze my hand from wherever he is in my head. Time does strange math. The 3 months it took to get from whisper to removal stretched like gum. The 3 days between the arraignment and the deal snapped like a rubber band. The first morning of quiet felt like a decade. The second felt like Tuesday. I cleaned out the guest room. I put the cat hair roller where it belongs. I found 2 of my sweaters that had migrated to the closet next door. I boxed up the shampoo bottles that hadn't been mine, wiped the shelf, and put my 2 back in the exact place where my hands find them without looking. If you are listening and you are older than the commercials want you to be, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me before the night the doorbell ate the whisper. Do not let the fear of being seen as suspicious gag your good sense. Do not give the keys to your name to someone because they call you Auntie. Do not ignore the little jokes you make about getting old because other people have started telling them for you. You are allowed to read every line out loud. You are allowed to ask for a second set of eyes. You are allowed to say, "Not today." You are allowed to tell love to wait until you have had a cup of coffee and a look at the fine print. If you are listening and you are the Page in your family, I want to tell you something that will not sound like forgiveness, but might, in the right light, look like a path toward it. Control is not the only way to keep from being left. In fact, sometimes it is the straightest road to being alone. Ask for help. Do not pretend help and control are twins. When you feel the fear that you will never earn what you want the slow way, sit in a room with an old woman and ask her how many days she did things the slow way and how many of them were worth it. When she tells you most, believe her. My father used to say when his knees were at their worst, "I'm not who I was when I hauled hay, but I'm also not dead." That's the space where I live now. I am not who I was when I carried letters through monsoon winds and kept my hat from blowing 2 fences over with sheer will. I am also not an invitation to be erased. I am Ruth. I know my address. I know my doctor's voice. I know my bank officer's laugh. I know which neighbor to call when a sprinkler head breaks. I know that rosemary grows whether you ask it to or not. I know that lemon peels shine when you rub them with a cloth the right way. I know that doorbells keep secrets you never wanted them to need to keep. I know that some nights are long, and some mornings are not heroic, but clean. I still have the red folder. I moved it behind the sweaters I wear in the 2 weeks of winter Phoenix pretends to provide. It holds my husband's letters and my father's discharge papers and a copy of Dr. Singh's kind verdict on my brain. It holds the certificate from the credit union that says my accounts are secured like a jar you have to put your whole palm around to open. It holds the will I signed in an office where the wall smelled like paint and hope. It holds a sticky note that says in my handwriting, "Don't sign anything on a Friday after 4. Nothing good starts then." I have known that since I learned how many missed deliveries wait on a Saturday. You have listened a long time. I know that. I spent my life walking from house to house carrying other people's words, and I know what it costs to carry them in your own head. If you came with me all the way to the end, I want to thank you. Tell me where you're listening from. I still read cities like postcards. If this story reminded you of a piece of paper you've been meaning to read, go read it. If it reminded you of a phone call you've been afraid to make it.
If it made you feel less alone sitting in a quiet kitchen with a lemon in your hand, squeeze it and sweeten your tea. I'm going to sit for a while now in the chair by the window that faces the street. The lamp on the table beside it is older than Paige and steadier. The doorbell light is soft. A kid on a scooter skates by, trailing laughter like a kite tail. Somewhere a neighbor is grilling. Somewhere else a dog that doesn't know it's not a lighthouse is barking at the same corner of air it barks at every night. The sky is pink in a way that people who don't live here never believe until they visit. My house feels like it dropped back onto its foundation and decided to stay. My name feels right in my mouth. My life, small and solid, tastes like cinnamon when I breathe. If you want to help me keep telling stories like this, there's a way to do that. If you don't, there's a way to listen that is its own kind of help. With love and with the stubborn respect an old mail carrier has for everyone who opens the door when she knocks, thank you.